Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm pleased to welcome you to our webinar on the topic Evolutionary Approach to Pragmatic Enterprise Agility. This webinar is brought to you by Nimble Work, where our motto is to humanize work. So as participants are still joining in, let's get started with our agenda. I will start by introducing our speakers. We will then move on to the main session, followed by an interactive Q&A session where we can learn from your experiences on this important topic. Just a second. I will reshare. Yes, sorry for this. A few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and the recording will be made available by email to all registered participants. We will be taking questions using the Q&A box on the Zoom panel. Please enter your questions, your queries there, and we will address them either at the end of the session or earlier if possible. Now, let me introduce you to our distinguished speakers today. Joining me is Manoj Aryan. He is the VP of Business Development at Nimble. He has been deeply involved not only in business development, but also in managing some of our largest projects and consulting engagements. Also, Sudipta Lahari, he's the head of engineering and products with Nimble Work and has been a lean Kanban practitioner for over 2 decades. He's also a distinguished fellow by Kanban University. So all of you, welcome to this webinar. Over to you, Sudhi.
Thanks, Linsa. Let me just make sure that I'm able to present the right screen here. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Linsa, for the introduction. So what I'm going to do is spend just a couple of slides about Nimble Work itself before we get and jump into the topic itself. So Nimble Work has been around for over 2 decades now. And during that period of time, we have done large-scale implementations in helping the customers provide end-to-end product delivery, function application delivery capability. It's been used by enterprises of all scale and size across multiple industries, remotely distributed. And during the last I would say since about 2010, so almost 14 years now, we have been working in the transition from the waterfall way of thinking and execution to a more nimble and an agile way of thinking and execution. Over these 20 years, 20 plus years, we have delivered over 30 billion worth projects on the Nimble platform. We are what we are because of these customers. It is with them that we have built the product based on their inputs, collaborating with them over these last 2 decades. And you will see some of the best and the brightest out there in terms of people with whom we have collaborated to be able to make the product richer and broader. So without any further ado, let's jump to the topic. I think everybody understands now that Agile is here for good, right? There is no real debate about it. And the fact is that as the complexity and as the uncertainty of the nature of what we are building increases, which is what we are experiencing day to day, Agile is a better fit for these kind of environments. Yet there is still a lot of confusion in terms of how to scale, how to grow it, how to be able to adopt it, what does it mean for different stakeholders, so on and so forth. And the reason is simple. The reason is because what we now talk about is quite quite different from what we have talked about over the last 50, 60 years that we used to actually teach project management and delivery management, right? So all these things that you kind of see me listing down um, somehow seem very, very counterintuitive to what we have taught, trained, practiced since the 1960s and the 1970s. And obviously, many of the decision makers in large enterprises are people who have been who started their career in that way of working. So for us to go ahead and tell them that we'll deliver more faster with lesser planning without estimation, it seems quite ridiculous, right? So therefore, in more often than not, they kind of land up with the conclusion that do these guys who are talking about lean agile even understand what really business is like, right? On the other side, clearly agile has lost the simplicity and the and the intuitiveness that it was supposed to bring to the table, right? It was supposed to be light, it was supposed to be nimble. This visual is anything but agile or anything but nimble. um, and we now have the evolution of large bodies of knowledge which are supposedly there to be able to make this practical and feasible for large enterprise scale adoption. But there even the success has been limited. There are enough number of uh, people, obviously some people have gained success, but then there are equal number of people, or if not more, who still struggle with this whole adoption problem. So what is evolutionary approach to pragmatic enterprise agility? What we are going to submit to you today is that you can do very small, simple things the way you were doing it before, on top of the core agile way of working, and deliver this level of adoption across all levels. How? So it's pretty much given now. Teams know what to do at the team execution level, right? And I don't think there's any ambiguity there. Um, if if there is a struggle there, then there is something else which is a problem. But I think for most teams know exactly how to do it, what to do. The mechanics are time tested for over 10 plus years now. On top of that, many organizations have realized that there needs to be able to some way or mechanism for us to be able to take it from ideation to backlog if we are in a product development environment, or be able to build a strategy to execution alignment using OKRs, or resort to the good old fashioned program portfolio management way. So the program portfolio management way will generate the demands where the budget allocation will happen. And once that is approved, the project gets instantiated. At that point of time, the teams can now get back, continue their agile execution and deliver to that approach. But these are a few things that are required in order to make sure that you are able to deliver all your other stakeholder expectations. One thing which Agile has significantly missed is it is very quiet on the rest of these areas. It talks very well about how to keep business happy. But apart from the team that is delivering for the business, so apart from these two stakeholders, there are a whole bunch of other people in this equation. There is a people management function, there's a finance management function, there is a risk and a and a business risk assessment function. All these and so many others, regulatory functions, all these stakeholders are part of the equation. And Agile is absolutely maintains a stony silence about all these other issues. So what we realize is that without buy-in of all the stakeholders for the way of working that Agile is choosing to advocate and demonstrate, it is always going to be hard to get an enterprise level agility all through the organization. People will question it, people will challenge it, people will give you all kinds of objections, because fundamentally each of their expectations is not being appropriately handled in this whole process. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about some of these areas, and then I'll just give you a very quick overview, and then my colleague Mano will actually take you through the Nimble product and how we are doing and addressing this, so that apart from your team level, apart from your team level agility, you are able to take it through the rest of your organization across all the stakeholders, make sure that they are comfortable and equally a part of the game. So let's talk about estimation. I think it is very clear that estimation is wasteful, right? You don't buy a TV or a car based on how much estimate it has taken to be able to build that product, right? You buy it for the value that it brings to you and for the brand and the quality, so on and so forth. But we need some level of estimation so that you can do a basic level of planning and forecasting, right? You can't just say, if your business says, hey, when will I get it, how much money you need, you can't say, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer because I don't estimate. That's not an answer. So what we have within Nimble are two very light approaches to be able to do estimation very quickly. One is a throughput based approach, where you essentially go ahead and look at what has been the rate at which the team has delivered in the past, and then you figure out, okay, what is my availability in this upcoming sprint based on people holidays or other plans, things like that, training plan and things like that. And then you balance it out to say, okay, if this is the availability, I should be able to take X number of work items in my sprint planning. So that's a simple throughput velocity based planning. On the other side is what we call as a relative sizing approach, where you look at what I have delivered in the past, what is their size, what is the characteristic of that kind of work, what is there in the backlog, and when you are looking at saying, okay, this item in the backlog is how much size, you are able to say, okay, if this sounds similar to something like this that we have done in the past, then this is a medium size effort. And thankfully, with all the tracking, I can tell you that the medium size effort is an epic of this much size, has this many technical stories, and will have this many user stories. So you're able to get a rough ballpark of what scale and size this work item is going to be. And for your estimation purpose, you really don't need anything more than that. Let's talk about people planning. Now, it is just because I'm doing Agile doesn't mean that you don't need to plan for your people function. Agile has been very harsh on utilization, tracking utilization. And that's for a very good reason, because you used to build utilization and then pack people to 100% capacity utilization. And that just does not work, because if in your system you have a lot of volatility, if in 1 week you have 10 items coming into the pipeline and another 2 weeks you have nothing coming into the pipeline, if you have that kind of volatility in the system, you cannot plan for 100% utilization, because when you suddenly have work, you will need to be able to service that work. So it's not that measuring utilization is a problem. The issue is the lack of understanding that the planned utilization needs to be commensurate with the uncertainty, the complexity, the volatility of the work that you're dealing with. The more the volatility, the more the uncertainty, complexity, or the volatility, the lesser the planned utilization that you should work with, so that you're able to take any variation in the pipeline that's coming to you, or sudden complexity that you discover during your work, without affecting your commitments that you've made to your customers, right? So Nimble allows you to do any of these kind of utilizations. And similarly is the whole budgeting process, right? You cannot just go to people and say, I can't tell you how much it's going to cost. People are going to ask for that number. Now you can say, okay, I'm going to plan for 10 people for 10 sprints. That's a reasonable estimate. But yet, along with that estimate, people are going to ask you, okay, with 10 people for 10 sprints, are you going to give me this much, or is it going to take 20? So you need to be able to get some level of cost planning done. It is unreasonable to say that you can't do it. And it's and the rock bottom traditional way of cost tracking is very, very adequate. We do in Nimble budgeted cost planning through our demand management module. You can do your allocated cost, which is a very simple allocation by cost structure, and of course the actual cost is nothing but the data that is coming from the timesheet. So here is what a simple resource costing would look like, right? You can actually go ahead and put for what location, what kind of role, persona, what kind of skill, what is the cost. And the system is intelligent enough that you don't need to define every possible permutation combination. You can define a default, and then whatever is the next level of granularity available, it goes and picks up that cost structure. And then you can plan for your allocations. Again, what Agile is not smart enough or not focused enough to be able to talk about it. But rarely are teams where every team member is 100% allocated to the project, right? You will have a DB administrator, you will have a content person, a documentation person who will come in and go out. And so you need to be able to plan for part allocations. So Nimble allows you to do this. And when you apply this on your allocation, you apply your cost structure, you will get your allocated cost. It's as simple as that. And nothing needs to become more complex for the purpose that we are trying to plan for. Risk and issue management, right? Again, Agile is very quiet about it, but these are extremely important areas that one needs to track and plan for. You need to make sure that you identify your positive risks, negative risks, when your risks are materializing and getting converted into issues. What are the risk management strategies? You just cannot go and keep on executing without anybody in the project thinking about this dimension. And very few teams have any defined stakeholder from Scrum to any other method, except Kanban, which is a very evolutionary method by itself, and therefore you can incrementally evolve as you go. But more prescribed methods do not have people designated and focused to cover these areas as a as a classic role responsibility function. And that does not work. You need to be able to define it, make sure that you are systematically planning it. And obviously you can use the modern visual management methods to make sure that yes, it is getting focus and it is not getting dropped off the radar. Forecasting, right? A classic thing that every stakeholder is going to ask you is, when are you going to get it, right? When am I going to get the stuff that you have? And Nimble actually is extraordinarily functional in being able to answer that question. Let me just explain to you how. Nimble obviously shows you whether you are on track or you're slipping and how much you're slipping with. And you can go into the detail and see which item in your work, in your scope definition is slipping by how much. And Nimble is intelligent enough that you don't always need to define the plan start and the plan end date for each and every item. It knows which is the next level of detail that I have in the system and tries to infer from that what is the plan start and what is the plan end date. But more importantly, one needs to know, okay, now that I'm slipping, what do I do about it? What are my options before me? So here is a situation where you have a certain rate at which work is coming to you, which is the slope of the blue line. And then you have a certain rate at which you are able to deliver work, which is the white dash line. And the system is able to tell you that at the current rate, you are going to miss your planned finish date of 10th October by approximately 17 odd days. It will finish only on 27th of October. Now you've got two options. You either accept the time spillover, or you reduce your card by a certain number of cards to be able to deliver to this time. Or you can even increase your velocity from the current velocity of 0.11 to the required velocity of 0.3, so that you have a good shot at being able to cover this. Right? So it gives you the options before you, so that you understand, you keep that in the context to say, okay, now that I'm slipping, what do I do? How do I get back on track? So it helps you understand where you have people available with similar skills if you want to consider that option to improve your velocity, if you want to consider adding some people and be able to increase velocity. Of course, it's well understood and well known that it is not a proportional increase. New people take time to ramp up, but then you might have another 4 months left in the project to be able to get that boost in your velocity, right? It also helps you to identify in your current backlog that you're working with which are the cards which are already done or blocked, because because it doesn't make sense for you to identify and take those cards. Their work has already started. So it makes more sense to be able to focus on the cards which have not yet started, look at those cards and deprioritize from them which ones you want to be able to finish, which ones you want to be able to take it out of the scope so that you can reduce your scope and meet the timeline. So I just wanted to kind of help you understand, going back to the basics, that if you are able to meet your stakeholder expectations across all functions, it cannot be that just the dev and business is happy and rest all stakeholders in the system are struggling to figure out what is happening in this project. If you are able to deliver your project along with business, making sure that all your stakeholder expectations are addressed, taken care of, communicated, then you will see a far greater success in an enterprise level adoption of your agile way of working. So with that, I'll transition it to Mano, and Mano, please take it over.
Sudhi, you'll have to unshare your
I'll
screen.
stop my sharing.
Yeah. So hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks, Sudhi, for setting up the context for today's session. And I would just like to start by logging in as a portfolio manager. And this is where we align the strategic objectives of the organization to the work that needs to be planned and prioritized within the organization. So Nimble provides two ways to do that. We provide a PPM module, which is very simple and easy to use, which has some AI-enabled capabilities built into it, which helps you to prioritize the projects or the demand that needs to be taken up. And we have an OKR framework. But just to set the context, I thought we will move to the PPM framework. And within the PPM framework, you will, within a portfolio or line of business, you will be able to see the demand that has been logged and how many of them has been approved and how many of them are in flight, which means that it has been approved and execution is happening, and you will be able to track the actual progress of these projects which are in action against the budget that has been approved for them. But at the demand level, there are a lot of details which can be captured, which is where the stakeholder visibility comes into play. You'll be able to capture the demand, collaborate with all key stakeholders within the organization by exchanging comments and documents. And then you will also be able to set up, okay, what is it going to cost if you're going to pick up this demand? And based on that, you can go through a budgeting cycle. And once it has been approved, it formally gets created as a project within the system. So any organizational level initiatives and programs that needs to be run, for which you need to track, allocate a budget. And one of the challenge which teams have always come back and asked is, I want to know what percentage of my budget has been utilized, whether I'll be able to finish the work in the budget that is coming. Am I getting the business value based on what has been completed till now? Do I need to continue to fund this project? So all of that can basically be managed within the PPM or the OKR framework, which we provide within the Nimble system. Now let us take the example that a large program has been approved, and it is going to be given to the team that needs to execute it. And let's assume Jessica is a program manager. She can basically go set up her program workspace, and the program workspace she will be able to capture quite a few details. So details pertaining to the budget value, the type of project, and also details pertaining to the team members who need to work in that project. So, like Sudhi mentioned, managing people in a in an enterprise is important, and as part of managing people, one of the most important exercise is how do I identify people with the right skill to be allocated to the project for the required period of time. So we provide an ability where you will be able to specify the skills that is required, and then you can invoke a search. You'll be able to see the best fit criteria. There is a score that gets generated in the system, and then you will also be able to see where these resources are currently working, and whether they can be adjusted. So all dimensions and parameters that is associated with people, just to make sure that people are not overloaded, number one, and also to make sure that resources with the right skill, because at the end of it, it's all about delivering value to your customers. It's all about delivering value to your consumers, and hence getting the right skill people is of paramount importance. And getting them, identifying them. They may be in any location within the organization. Identifying them and getting into the release pipe to the release workspace or the project workspace is important, and that is a capability which has been built into Nimble. Now, once we have the basic, and there are a little bit more frameworks associated with that within the context of a project. We can take that up later. But once the basic core fundamentals of a project has been set up within the Nimble system, then Nimble provides a way in which you will be able to break down the key requirements of the program into smaller user stories. So the key ideas can basically be listed. It can be captured. It can be approved through the demand lifecycle. And then for each of those key ideas that or the demand that needs to be implemented or requirement that needs to be implemented, you will basically be able to logically break it down so that it is not only understood by the architects, it is understood by the program managers, it is understood by the stakeholders, in some cases by the customers, and also by the project team who are basically picking up that work and going to execute it. So you get to see the team, how it has been broken down based on the personas who are going to consume the service, and then how each epic is further broken down to user stories. You will get a visualization in terms of user stories that are still in my backlog and user stories that has been assigned to my current or future sprint. So you get to see a roadmap based on which how some of these key program level or project level requirements can be implemented. Now, one point that I wanted to highlight over here, as you would have seen in Sudhi's way, is it gives you a structured way wherein which you will be able to break it down to smaller user stories which are testable, which is easily understood by the teams, and which can be picked up for its execution. Now, once the user stories has been defined, yes, you have a backlog of user stories, and typically that backlog will be a huge number. But you then have a defined set of team. Based on that, you have defined your release and your sprint cadence. So there is only a definite scope that can be picked up in a particular sprint, as Sudhi did show you before. So we do provide a capability wherein which all the stakeholders can get connected to one interface and get into a prioritization exercise. So the prioritization exercise will first give you what is the status of your backlog. So you had 585 stories defined, 222 completed, 246 are in the backlog. And then you get to see from this 222, which has been completed, which area did it focus more on. So you're able to see that for configuration management framework, a lot of work has happened, but the customer is now saying, or the business is demanding, we need to do something on integration. So because less work has happened on that stream. So you can basically then drill down. You will see the total stories that has been defined for integration. You know that there are upcoming sprints, and then you can say which area you want to focus on. So all of this is based on grouping, and all of these grouping and the parameters based on which you want to prioritize is completely configurable. So once you choose your user UI improvement, you can then go and detail the user stories. So we have a grooming process where the stories or the work items can be groomed in detail to an extent wherein it can be easily understood by the team members. Typically, we have seen a lot of waste creeping into the system because the person who picks up the user story is not able to understand the context. That is not captured in a formal way in the system, but here the context is available, so you will be able to reduce a lot of waste as a result of that. And then you can then go to the sprint prioritization. You will get to see the current and the future sprints. You will be able to see how the team has delivered in the past, and then the user stories where the prioritization and the grooming has been completed will be shown below, and you can just do a simple drag and drop mechanism and build the scope of the entire sprint. So there are multiple ways in which we can do, which we support. It can be selected by the teams, but at the end of it, what we wanted to highlight is you get a view where you get to see what is it that you're going to do in my current sprint and what is it that you're going to do in my future sprints in the system. So this is my backlog. This is what is going to come next, and this is going to be done by this team. So you basically get to see sprint-wise view on the nature of work that has been picked up and scoped for execution. Uh, Now, one important point over here is, which I just forgot to mention, you can see that in each of these user stories, one of the important parameters that is being used to size the user story is the estimate. So you can see the estimates for each of these work items that has been defined over here. Estimation, as Sudhi mentioned, can be done through the throughput process or through the relative size estimation module that we provide in the application. So you get to see the user stories that has been completed. You get to see the size of those user stories. And if there is a new user story which you want to pick up, like say, for example, I want to develop this UPI, this API, then you will be able to say that this is very similar to this particular user story in terms of size and complexity. It is very similar to this user story which has been worked on by people. So if I just drag and drop this user story to this column, then based on the settings which you have done, large means 15 story points, that estimate gets inherited by the user story. Now, this approach, a lot of our customers and even in the industry, it is known, it is a far more simple and an accurate approach because you're basing it on based on what has been done by your team. Your team has taken a similar complex user story for its execution. The estimate was 15 story points, and since that is validated and proved, that can then be assigned to the new user story that is there in your backlog. So what we are basically saying over here is, yes, you can create your strategies, you can break them down to user stories, you can estimate them, you can prioritize them, and once it has been prioritized, you can then easily take them for the purpose of execution. So we provide a execution board where the teams can define their own value stream, and you can see that this is a sprint that has just started, so it is in the ready queue. Some of the teams have already started picking it up, which is in the analysis design. There is one card which is in the build stage, so you can create your own value stream and move the cards or move the user stories based on completion of work. But what I wanted to highlight is it is just not a board. When a team comes, they get to see a lot of visual indicators. So you can see that it is highlighting that there is a dependency associated with this user story, and that dependency is causing a delay. So you can look at the cards that are dependent on this user story and see what can be done to circumvent that delay and bring it back on track. You'll also be able to see that someone has given an update, someone has added a comment. You will be able to see attribute related information, percentage completion. Someone has flagged this user story. Something needs to be noted in this user story because it has a risk factor associated with it. So all these visual indicators which we provide over here makes it very practical for teams who are performing a review on how work is progressing. They will very easily be able to identify where I need to focus on and then just focus on those capabilities. Now, from a practical perspective, in most of the agile teams, be it Scrum or be it Kanban, getting connected every day in the morning and getting a quick feedback is an important activity. So we provide a stand-up wizard out of the box, which will basically help you to look at the work which your team is working on, has been assigned to them, has worked on, where are the blockers, and then have a meaningful discussion through the system and make sure that you are able to prioritize the work and take it to its closure. We also provide a lot of insights over here. We have a list view, we have a timeline view, we have a dependency view, and all of this view will again give practical insights on how work is progressing. You don't have to, just connect with the team and have a second level discussion. It is all available within the system. And then the Nimble framework also provides a very comprehensive reporting framework. I will shortly come to the analytics part. But if I just say, for example, go to the project health, I will be able to see, uh, I can see a view for a particular release. You will be able to see that this release is likely to have a spillover of 190 cards. If I have to avoid this spillover, my current velocity is this, I have to increase my velocity to 7 cards a day. So how do I increase my velocity to 7 cards a day? Like Sudhi said, you can look at it. If you want to increase your team size, you can increase it. If you want to deprioritize some work, you can deprioritize them. And then if you want to see where work is really getting delayed, you will be able to see those delays also factored in this visualization, which we provide over here. And what we also do is we give you an indication which would tell you that this release, you're likely to, the planned finish date is 30th September, and there is a possibility, because of this red indicator over here, there is a possibility that it can get delayed. So when I'm able to finish a feature, when I'm able to finish a milestone which has been committed to the customer, or a deliverable which has been committed to a customer, all of those views can be calculated and viewed within the Nimble system, along with all the core tracking metrics. Like, say, for example, I want to see the composition of my backlog, I want to see the distribution of work of my backlog, or I want to see the areas where a lot of work has got piled up. So you will be able to set up your own dashboards and get a far more practical and meaningful insight on the basis of how work needs to progress. Now, one important point that I wanted to highlight over here uh, is the fact that apart from these dashboards, which provides you a powerful roll up and a drill down capability, when you are in projects of a good size, where a good set of team members are working, and there are customer commitments, customers are very particular about the commitments and the dates. We do provide ability where you can track risks and issues, and you can have a completely different value stream or a work stream defined to track risk and issues within the context of your project. So you will be able to see the risk that has been logged. You'll be able to see the impact, the score, and then if I go to a particular risk, I can break the risk down to action items, or I can break them to tasks which can be assigned to specific user, and you will be able to track the progression in terms of its completion. And then, like you have a visual board for tracking your regular sprint and release related activities, you can have within the same workspace another work stream, another swim lane to track your risks and issues. So you'll be able to see the issues or risks which the team is working upon, which the team has not started working upon. So all that views along with your core release delivery, milestone delivery, deliverables that has been committed to the customers, you will be able to track them all within the system. Now, timeline is an important factor in any large project. So, like, say, for example, there is a milestone which needs to be delivered by 30th September, or there is a deliverable which the customer is expecting. The customer is expecting that the cloud migration should be completed by 15th of of October, after which he will then look at going for an org-wide rollout or things like that. So we do provide an ability where such milestones or objectives you will be able to track them at a high level in the application, and then as the underlying work gets executed, the percentage completion gets calculated, and you will be able to see. Say, for example, if I look at the prototype or action board, you are able to see that it is almost 83% complete. You will, if I drill down, I'll be able to see the due date which has been committed. And then if I want to know what is the remaining work, I can get a very simple and an easy visualization to show me which of those user stories are complete. So you see over here that my 3 epics has been 100% done, but there is one epic which is 33% done, and I can drill down and then go and see the user stories within that epic that needs to be completed. So you get a timeline view. You'll be able to map it to the commitment which you have made with your customer or made internally. You'll be able to see very easily what is remaining. You will be able to get views which will show you that, okay, you have 17% work done, but will you still require 10 days to complete it, or are you going to require 20 days to complete it? That is a view which I showed you before. So you will get all those views within the system, based on which the leadership, the program delivery team, the stakeholder team will be able to take corrective and meaningful decisions to make sure that your projects, your programs, your initiatives are on track. So that is a quick overview. There are other capabilities that I wanted to highlight, but I'll just skip them in interest of time. Like, say, for example, Sudhi did talk about resource utilization views. We showed a screenshot, so you'll be able to see utilization of resources across your organization, utilization of resources based on roles or various other parameters across your organization. And then you will be able to see where that will basically help you to determine, what are the skills that is being used or roles that is being maximum utilized within the organization, and how I can reskill and upskill the resources. To make it more practical, we have also brought in capabilities like, say, for example, if I'm working on a deliverable, or if I'm working on a milestone or a risk, or even a user story, the system will give you insights. Have you worked on something similar in the past? And based on what you have worked in the past, can you bring those meaningful insights in the context of my current work? So that is a view which is available for all work items within the Nimble application. And whenever it finds something similar, it just gives you an indicator, and you can click and get into that specific detail, and then bring that learning within the context of your project. So I will now, I think I'm on top of the hour. I'll just see if Sudhi, if there is anything else that you would want me to cover, or should we take some questions?
No, I think thanks, Mano, for doing it, covering so much in a limited period of time. I just wanted to, before we get into the Q&A session, I just wanted to again reiterate our key message, which is that if you do not make and satisfy all your stakeholders, you will not be able to get into your journey of getting agile thinking adopted across all levels of the organization. And if that does not happen, then the teams will keep struggling with their own agile execution, because the peripheral teams and the support teams are not thinking that way. They're not tuned to that way of thinking and execution. So for a harmonious, sustained adoption of this way of working, it is important that all these functions, finance, HR, regulatory, if you have procurement, all these functions understand their impact. What does it mean for them? How will their questions and answers get answered? How will their planning functions objective be served as teams work in this pattern? And what we wanted to share with you today is that a lot of these things are very easily done in a product like Nimble in a way that you were already familiar with, or in some cases tweak it a little here and there. So that's what
and in one system,
absolutely in one integrated function product.
Yeah.
So without any further ado, let's get into some of the questions. And Linsa, why don't you go ahead and take some of them, and you can throw those questions up, and we'll try and see whether myself or Mano takes them on.
All right. Yes, Sudhi. So we do have few questions. So the first question is, in Pragmatic Agile, how is customer feedback integrated into the development process? And how does this approach ensure that customer needs are met continuously?
So there are two parts to the question. The first one is Nimble has its own retrospective offering. You are able to do a full scale, regular cadence retrospective in a completely anonymous way. Generate your action items, send those action items to a board like this on Nimble, where you can see those action items and you can track them to closure. If you notice, we give you a very visual indicator of which cards are aging, so that you are able to identify why these cards are aging and why these are not getting closed. So it allows you to take that full feedback cycle, whether you do it within the team, whether you do it including with the customer as part of the stakeholder. Both those options are available within Nimble. What was the second question, Linsa?
So how does this approach ensure that customer needs are met continuously?
So the core benefits and the way you work in agile thinking, whichever be the agile thinking, that is not being changed. Your interaction with the customer, stakeholder, the product owner, that does not change. So you can involve them in the sprint planning process, do the upstream process, all those nice things that we have, because of which agile has been so successful, as I started my presentation with. None of those need to change. You're doing all of those. Your customer and your or the equivalent stakeholders are very much part of the sprint demo cycle. If you are doing a Kanban way execution, part of the demo value stream stage, so that they can participate in the dev process itself, give you feedback, give you time to be able to implement the feedback. None of those changes. So all these pluses of agile thinking and way of execution are available to you today. All that we were trying to highlight to you today is to make sure that all the other functions are also equally in sync, aligned, and in tune with how they will be able to function if you want to work in this way of working. Because if they become a bottleneck for you, the teams would themselves struggle to get their agile execution done, right? If they are not getting the right picture of how much is the demand and what skills they need to recruit and hire and train for, you will not get the people when you need them, when you are expecting that volatility, that sudden spike in your work inflow. So it is important, and so that was our focus. And to that extent, all the good things, whether you are working in Scrum, Kanban, or any of the scaling frameworks, there is absolutely no reason why you would abandon them.
Okay. So the second question is, what are the key challenges teams face when transitioning from traditional agile frameworks to being more pragmatic in agile adoption?
I think a large number of teams get very strongly influenced by what they learn and hear in their training programs, in their certification programs. And in these programs, there is very little talk and literature about these function groups that also need to be addressed. And those challenges become obstacles and blockers for you as you want to go ahead and execute. So to that extent, that's my simple answer, is that it is the lack or the lack of highlighting uh, the deficit in terms of highlighting the importance of these functions that we used to do in classic project management, right? PMP, PMI certification used to explain all those communication management, risk management, all these areas, contractual expectations, all these areas, you cannot just abandon them just because your team is doing agile. They all need to be taken along. So
Okay.
I do see
Yeah, so
one.
there is a question. Considering how to utilize this framework for business optimization projects, we do not work in Jira for such projects, but I can see how Nimble platform might be useful.
Thanks for that feedback. We would have loved to know who you are, but we absolutely appreciate that feedback.
And please do get in touch with us. Linsa will shortly share our contact details. You also have our email details, so please feel free to get in touch with us, and we will help you out.
Linsa, go ahead. Are there any other questions out there?
Yes, I think we can accommodate one more question. Yeah. So, how does Pragmatic Agile address the balance between speed of delivery and maintaining high quality in product development?
Okay. So, once again, all the good things that we have learned from Agile way of working continue as is. Uh, None of what we have talked about is an impediment to that process. It is only a few extra things that we have always done under the umbrella of project management or program management, that we have demonstrated to you how you can continue to do it while you're thinking and executing agile. Um, Linsa, just repeat the question again for me, please.
The question says Pragmatic Agile address the balance between speed of delivery and maintaining high quality in product development. So, how
So
does Pragmatic Agile
yeah,
address?
so clearly we talked about the speed of the velocity, focus on the velocity and the throughput of execution. About quality, I think it is not just from the agile method, but overall, along with if you're doing software development, agile is very well supplemented with all the engineering practices that you are adopting today in being able to support this way of working, and the modern tools support that, right? Whether it's in terms of using behavior driven development, test driven development, to make sure that you are building in quality from day one, whether it is to make sure that all your DevSecOps concerns are taken ahead of the life cycle in the shift left process, so that you address those concerns from day one before you start development. So all these engineering methods that would ensure that you are delivering quality product at a high cadence are absolutely critical to be able to support agile execution. You cannot work in a manner where your engineering practices are traditional, you're doing traditional work breakdown structure and manual testing, and then expect to be doing a sprint release every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, right? You're just going to be rolling out more bad quality stuff to your customer environment if you have not nailed the engineering problem. So it is assumed that Agile has assumed that you know how to be able to handle that quality. And there are enough number of engineering practices today in terms of, as I said, any of these pair programming, any of these way of working, any of the design patterns that we talk about that will support you to be able to do high volume, high scalable microservices based applications and products that actually deliver a very high quality product day in day out. So that part I think is well taken care of. Of course, in terms of quality in non-IT environments, that I think will depend from domain to domain, and I am not well equipped to be able to comment on how for each of those domains a quality approach would apply. But the premise is simple, which is you got to build in quality from day one if you want to deliver to your business at a very high frequency. It was Deming in the 1970s or 80s as part of his 14 quality principles who said you cannot do a sample quality testing to make sure that you're delivering quality. Quality has to be built in from day one for you to be able to ensure that you get quality. Anything else, Linsa?
No, I think I'll just share the contact information.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you, folks, for joining in. It is always a pleasure to be able to share our approach, our thought process, and hear your feedback. And thank you for all the positive feedback that you have shared in today.
So thank you, Mano. Thank you, Sudhi, for sharing your invaluable insights. Everybody, this is the contact information, and I will be sending you the recording of the recording of the webinar as well as with the information further. So thank you, everybody, for joining in. So from all of us at Nimble Work, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.